What if the biggest wealth-building opportunity of your life doesn't start until the day you stop working? Most people spend 40 years chasing a paycheck, believing that retirement means the end of financial growth. But the wealthy know a completely different truth. Stay with us, because what you're about to discover will completely change the way you think about money, work, and the rest of your life. From the moment we were old enough to understand money, society handed us a script. Go to school, study hard, get a good job, work for decades, and then, only then, can you rest. Retirement was painted as the finish line, the reward at the end of a long race. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in school, no employer, and certainly no government ever told you. That script was never designed to make you rich. It was designed to make you useful. Think about it. The entire system, education, employment, taxes, is built around one idea: keeping you productive for someone else's benefit during the best years of your life. Your 20s, 30s, and 40s are your highest energy decades. And where does all that energy go? Into someone else's business, into someone else's dream, into building someone else's wealth. By the time most people retire, they feel financially exhausted. They've spent decades earning money, yes, but they've also spent decades handing most of it right back out. Rent or mortgage payments, school fees, car loans, credit card debt, living expenses. The hamster will never stop spinning. And the cruel irony? The moment the wheel finally stops is the moment people discover they actually have a chance to build something real. Because retirement doesn't just give you time, it strips away every excuse you ever had for not paying attention to your money. Here's something that will surprise you. Studies consistently show that a significant number of people accumulate more net worth in the first 10 years of retirement than they did in the last 20 years of their working life. Read that again. More wealth built after retirement than during 2 full decades of employment. How is that even possible? The answer lies in something most working people never have enough of: focused attention. When you are working, your financial life runs on autopilot. Your salary comes in, the bills go out, and whatever is left gets saved or spent without much thought. You are simply too busy surviving the week to sit down and truly examine where your money is going, what your assets are doing, and whether your financial decisions actually make sense. Work consumes your mental energy. By Friday evening, the last thing you want to do is review your investment portfolio or research passive income strategies. But the day you retire, something powerful happens. The noise stops. The Monday morning pressure disappears. The endless emails, the commute, the workplace stress, gone. And in that silence, for the very first time, most people actually sit down and look at their complete financial picture. Not a glance, not a quick check of the bank balance. A real, honest, undistracted look at everything they own, everything they owe, and everything they could potentially grow. And what they find shocks them. Because buried inside their finances, inside their pension, their property equity, their savings, their old workplace benefits, is far more than they ever realized. The pieces were always there. They just never had the time or the stillness to see them clearly. There is one financial superpower that almost nobody talks about, and retirees stumble into it completely by accident. It is the power of having zero mandatory obligations on your time. And when you truly understand what this unlocks, you will never look at retirement the same way again. When you are employed, your time is not yours. Even your free time carries the shadow of work. The early bedtime because of tomorrow's meeting, the weekend cut short because Monday is coming, the holiday you can't fully enjoy because your inbox is filling up. Your entire life is structured around someone else's schedule. And this constant time pressure has a devastating effect on your finances that most people never connect. It forces you into expensive shortcuts. Think about the financial decisions working people make purely because they have no time. They order takeaway instead of cooking because they are exhausted. They renew insurance policies without shopping around because who has time to compare? They leave money sitting in low-interest accounts for years because researching better options feels overwhelming after a long day. They pay full price for things they could have negotiated. They miss investment opportunities because they never had a spare afternoon to learn how to act on them. Every single one of these shortcuts costs money. Individually, they seem small. Collectively, over years and decades, they quietly drain enormous amounts of wealth from your life without you ever noticing. But the retired person has something the working person desperately lacks: unlimited time to be financially smart. They can shop around, negotiate, research, invest carefully, and make decisions with patience instead of panic. And patience, in the world of money, is worth a fortune. There is a specific financial moment that quietly transforms the lives of retirees, and most people don't even recognize it when it happens. It is the moment they become truly debt-free. And for the majority of people, that moment arrives right around retirement age. Not because they planned it perfectly, but simply because enough time has finally passed. Think about the typical financial journey of a working person. In their 20s, they take on student loans. In their 30s, they buy a home with a 25 or 30-year mortgage. They finance cars, carry credit card balances, take personal loans to handle life's unexpected expenses. For decades, a massive portion of every single paycheck disappears before it can even be considered theirs. Interest payments, monthly installments, minimum balances. The banks and lenders are always first in line, taking their cut before you can do anything meaningful with your own money. But by the time retirement arrives, something remarkable has happened quietly in the background. The mortgage is paid off or nearly finished. The children are grown and financially independent. The car is owned outright. The debts that once consumed 40 or 50% of monthly income have slowly dissolved. And suddenly, for the first time in their adult lives, people are keeping nearly everything they receive. Their pension, their savings withdrawals, their investment returns. It all stays with them instead of flowing straight back out to creditors. This is an absolutely enormous shift, because it is not just about having more money. It is about what happens to your wealth when compound interest finally starts working completely in your favor instead of against you. The same force that made your debts grow for decades now makes your savings and investments grow instead. The machine reverses direction, and it is breathtaking. If there is one concept that separates people who retire wealthy from people who retire struggling, it is a deep and personal understanding of compound interest. Not just knowing what it is. Every working adult has heard of it, but truly feeling its power working in their favor, often for the very first time, during retirement. Here is the brutal reality of compound interest during your working years. For most people, it works against them. Credit card companies charge compound interest on balances. Mortgage lenders collect compound interest on home loans. Car finance companies, personal loan providers, buy now pay later schemes, they all use the power of compounding to quietly extract wealth from working people month after month, year after year. You are on the wrong side of the equation for decades without even realizing it. But something extraordinary happens when the debts disappear and savings begin to accumulate. Compound interest switches sides. Suddenly, it is your investments growing on top of previous growth. Your dividend income reinvesting and generating more dividends. Your pension fund quietly multiplying in the background while you sleep. The mathematical engine that once worked tirelessly against you is now working tirelessly for you, and it never takes a day off. What makes retirement the perfect environment for this is time and consistency. Retirees are not dipping into their investments every month to cover bills the way working people often do. They have pension income, state benefits, and saving structures that cover living expenses. This means their investment portfolios are left completely undisturbed to grow. And an undisturbed compound interest engine, given even 10 or 15 years, can produce results that genuinely shock people who spent decades believing they would never be wealthy. Here is something that will genuinely surprise you. The majority of people who retire in the UK and USA are sitting on a life-changing asset that they spent decades building without even thinking of it as an investment. They didn't buy it to get rich. They bought it because they needed somewhere to live. But by the time retirement arrives, This single asset has quietly grown into one of the most powerful wealth-building tools they will ever own. That asset is their home. Property ownership is the accidental investment strategy that has created more everyday millionaires than almost any other vehicle in modern financial history. A person who bought a modest home in the 1980s or 1990s and simply lived in it, maintained it, and paid off the mortgage over time is now sitting on an asset that has in many cases tripled or quadrupled in value. They didn't actively invest. They didn't study the markets. They simply stayed put and let time do its work. But here is where retirement unlocks something truly powerful. For the first time, retirees have genuine flexibility with this asset. Their children have moved out. The large family home is no longer necessary. And the options that open up are extraordinary. They can downsize to a smaller property and pocket hundreds of thousands in tax-free profit. They can release equity through carefully structured schemes that generate monthly income without selling. They can rent out rooms or even the entire property while moving somewhere with lower living costs. Suddenly, the home that was simply where they lived becomes an active engine of wealth generation. And most retirees are genuinely stunned when they sit down and calculate exactly how much their property is now worth compared to what they originally paid. Ask any working person to explain exactly how their pension works, and most will give you a vague answer. They know money comes out of their paycheck every month. They know their employer adds something on top. They know it goes somewhere and grows somehow. But the details? The actual mechanics of what is happening inside that pension pot year after year? Most working people have absolutely no idea. And that ignorance, while completely understandable given how busy working life is, costs them enormously. Because here is the truth about workplace pensions that most employees never fully grasp while they are still working. Every single month, 3 separate forces are combining to grow that pension pot simultaneously. First, your own contributions are going in. Second, your employer's contributions are being added on top. And in many cases, that employer contribution is essentially free money that people barely acknowledge. Third, the entire combined pot is being invested in financial markets and growing through compound returns year after year. 3 engines running at the same time, every single month, for decades. By the time retirement arrives and people finally sit down with a pension advisor or log into their pension portal with unhurried attention, the number staring back at them is frequently far larger than they ever imagined. People who genuinely believe they had barely saved enough to survive retirement discover they have accumulated a pot that, when managed correctly and drawn down strategically, can generate comfortable income for 20 or 30 years while still leaving a meaningful inheritance for their children. And the smartest retirees go one step further. They don't just draw their pension. They study it, restructure it, and use it as the foundation of a broader wealth strategy that continues growing long after their working years are finished. There is a transformation that happens inside the mind of a person the moment they retire, and it is far more powerful than any financial strategy, any investment vehicle, or any pension pot. It is a complete and total shift in how they relate to money. And this psychological change alone is responsible for more post-retirement wealth creation than most financial experts will ever admit. When you are working, your relationship with money is fundamentally reactive. Money arrives on payday and immediately gets attacked from every direction. The mortgage payment goes out. The utility bills are due. The car insurance renews. The weekly grocery shop drains another chunk. You are constantly playing defense with your finances, reacting to demands rather than making intentional choices. There is no space to think strategically because survival mode never fully switches off. You are managing money, not growing it. But retirement forces a completely different mindset. When the paycheck stops, people become extraordinarily intentional about every single financial decision in a way they never were during their working years. They start tracking spending with genuine attention. They begin questioning every subscription, every expense, every financial habit they carried for decades on autopilot. And what they discover is that an enormous amount of money was quietly leaking out of their lives for years through sheer inattention and habit. This newfound intentionality combines with something equally powerful, a long-term perspective. Working people think in weeks and months because that is how paydays and bill cycles work. Retirees begin thinking in decades. They ask different questions. Not can I afford this month, but what does this decision mean for the next 20 years of my financial life? And that single shift in time horizon transforms ordinary financial decisions into genuine wealth-building moves. One of the most surprising discoveries retirees make is that stepping away from full-time employment does not mean stepping away from income. In fact, for a growing number of people across the UK and USA, retirement becomes the season of life where they build more diverse and sustainable income streams than they ever had during their entire working career. And the reason this happens is both simple and deeply human. For the first time, they are working on their own terms. Think about the skills, knowledge, and experience that a person accumulates over a 35 or 40-year career. A retired accountant carries decades of financial expertise in their mind. A retired teacher has mastered the art of explaining complex ideas simply and clearly. A retired engineer understands systems and problem-solving at a level that took a lifetime to develop. A retired nurse has practical medical knowledge that people desperately need. During their working years, all of this extraordinary expertise was packaged and sold cheaply to a single employer for a fixed monthly salary. But retirement removes that restriction completely. Suddenly, that same knowledge can be offered to the world on completely personal terms. Consulting work that pays several times the old hourly rate. Online courses that teach hard-won expertise to thousands of students simultaneously. Books and guides that generate royalty income for years without additional effort. Coaching and mentoring services that help younger professionals navigate the same career paths the retiree already mastered. Part-time advisory roles that pay handsomely for occasional wisdom rather than constant presence. These income streams share one beautiful characteristic that employment never offered. They generate money without consuming life. They work around the retiree's schedule, their energy levels, and their genuine interests. And because they are built on authentic expertise rather than manufactured busyness, they tend to be remarkably sustainable and deeply satisfying in ways that decades of regular employment rarely were. So here we are. After everything we have explored together across this entire video, the real answer to why people get rich after retirement is not one single thing. It is not the pension. It is not the property. It is not the free time or the cleared debts or the compound interest or the new income streams. It is all of them arriving simultaneously for the very first time in a person's life. And that combination creates something genuinely extraordinary. Think about what a retiree actually has that a working person desperately lacks. They have time to think clearly about money without the fog of workplace exhaustion. They have decades of hard-earned wisdom that the world is willing to pay for. They have assets that spent years quietly growing in the background while life was happening. They have expenses that have shrunk dramatically as mortgages ended and children became independent. They have a mindset finally freed from survival mode and ready to think in terms of legacy and long-term growth. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire working lives believing that wealth is something that happens to other people, to luckier people, to people who were born into the right families or stumbled into the right opportunities. But the truth this video has been building toward from the very first second is far more empowering than that. The conditions for genuine wealth were quietly assembling themselves inside your own life this entire time. Retirement simply removes the final barrier standing between you and seeing them clearly. The richest years of your life are not behind you. For an extraordinary number of people, they are still ahead. The only question that remains is whether you will be ready to recognize the opportunity when it finally arrives, and whether you will have the courage to act on it.